The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to get 50% bonus bonus to $1,000. Also brought by Rhythm, the leader in data-driven picks and props. Get it set for all today. Looking to sportsgambling.com, RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Wednesday morning on January 22nd, roughly 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the women's semifinal matches coming up over the next day or so in the Australian Open. So once again, we're going to break down two matches for the actual episode. So it should be a bit shorter than the episodes we've had over the last few days. But either way, point is, show must go on as we're reaching the final stages of the event. Now, for the actual recap of the Lock and Dog picks, we did have two episodes, one for the men's and one for the women's quarterfinals. Now, for this sake of the Lock and Dog, we are going to be recapping just the women's episode. We'll save the men's quarterfinal recap for the men's semifinal episode coming up probably either later today or even tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. Now, getting into the actual recap of the Lock and Dog picks for the women's quarterfinal episode. Overall, decent. Unfortunately, I did switch my dog at the last second, and the dog I initially had would have won, but either way, it is what it is. Starting off with the lock, ended up having Swiatek minus 5.5 at minus 140 against Navarro. Never in doubt, as Swiatek destroyed her. She's been on the warpath. She's dominated everybody so far in the event, and she ended up winning this one very comfortably, as you saw her get the job done by, once again, a wide margin, winning 6-1, 6-2. So complete blowout. I can't even say Navarro played that badly, honestly. I just felt like Swiatek has reached a certain gear that just puts her really ahead of everybody else right now. I know Sabalenka has won the last two titles, but if you want to make the argument that right now Swiatek's the best player in the field, I'm not going to argue with you because Swiatek's been insane. And I feel like you're looking at how much she has really just coasted throughout the entire event. I can't really overlook it. She's just been that good. It's one of the best runs I've ever seen from a player, just in terms of making really just mincemeat of the competition. She's just destroying everybody. To go through the actual numbers for Swiatek, if you are curious, Swiatek over the last couple of matches, the first round match was somewhat close. Swiatek, though, over the last four matches, has lost a total of 7 games combined over her last four matches. She has been destroying people. So her being Navarro by a wide margin was not a surprise. Navarro, I actually thought played pretty well, at least for somebody who lost 6-1, 6-2. Navarro, I thought played well enough to beat a decent amount of competition, and Swiatek was not one of them because Swiatek came out and buried her. So overall, nice win for us there. For the dog, picked up a loss. We had Goff team total over 12.5 games at even money, and that one fell short as Goff did lose in straight sets. Now, I'd say the read itself made sense because we thought that you'd get one competitive set, probably 1-7-5 or 7-6. We got it. The problem was Goff did lose both sets. She couldn't hit a forehand. It felt like the unforced error count was drastically high, and that was the reason why she lost. The other pick that I had initially for the dog was actually the Keys and Svitolina over 2.5 sets, and then I switched it at the last minute. So that kind of sucks, but either way, a point is ended up picking up a loss in the dog, but ended up having a winner for the lock, so it could be worse, and hopefully we end up sweeping the semifinal, I'd say, matches for this episode. Now, I see a couple people in the comment section. Uneducated, welcome back. Nice to see you again. Savage, welcome back too. Badoza getting Goff and Sabalenka back-to-back is definitely not ideal. Savage is actually a step further, because if Badoza ends up beating Sabalenka, she'll have Goff, then Sabalenka, and then probably Swiatek in the final. So that could get even worse potentially, but either way, Badoza actually making it to the semis is still impressive. I feel like most people did not pick her to get that far. In the Goff quarter was also the Pegula quarter too. So I know Pegula did get upset earlier, so she didn't have to face off against Pegula. There is an alternative world she could have had to face off against Pegula, then Goff, then Sabalenka, and then maybe Swiatek. So yeah, it was not exactly the easiest draw for Badoza for the entire event, but she's still here, and we'll see if she can do some damage against Sabalenka over the next day or so. I see John asking if it's still worth it to take Sviatek to win the final at minus 110. It really comes down to what you think the price is going to be in a hypothetical matchup against Sabalenka, because Sabalenka is a two-time defending champion. So I am wondering how big of a favorite Swiatek would be in the final matchup. Now, I know the counterpoint would be, well, in theory, if Badoza ends up upsetting Sabalenka and Swiatek wins, she'll be a massive favorite in the final. But that's kind of the counterpoint. But I do wonder what the price would be for a hypothetical Swiatek and Sabalenka matchup. I'm assuming Swiatek would be favored, actually, because right now she's the favorite to win the event on the outright market. Not by a lot, but I am kind of wondering what the price would be. Maybe Swiatek like minus 125, minus 130, if I had to guess, but that's all speculation. I'm sure that price would change if Swiatek had a war in the semis against Keys and Sabalenka dominated against Badoza. Then maybe the line flips a little bit, so it's kind of tough to fully tell if that minus 110 price at the moment has some value to it. I would probably say yes, but that really comes down to how confident you are in her beating Sabalenka in the final. That's really all it comes down to. If you're asking me right now who I would take in a potential matchup, I would take Swiatek if I had to pick. But once again, minus 110, I think it might have value, but it really comes down to how confident you are in Iga dethroning the two-time champion. Because once again, she has been dominant against some good competition. But Sabalenka is kind of a different animal, winning two straight, once again, Australian Open titles. She's been phenomenal in hard court. So, I don't know. You might have missed the boat on that, John, to be honest. Like, if you want to take it, you can. Would I take it at minus 110? No. I probably wouldn't. I kind of want to just see how the tournament plays out. Then again, at the same point, we also dominated the actual quarters. So I'll get into the quarter recap in a second. But we did have a pretty, I'd say, a very successful quarters for this tournament. So once again, I feel like Swiatek we did not take initially to win the event, but we have Sabalenka at around plus, I think it was 240 or so. Let me pull that up. Maybe I would hedge at a Sabalenka and take Swiatek at minus 110, but that's only because I do have Sabalenka to win the event at 240. So maybe I would hedge personally, but would I go out of my way to take Swiatek now to win the event at minus 110 if I didn't have Sabalenka already? Probably not. I feel like you kind of missed the boat on that. If I had to personally, I'd say if you should take a Swiatek now at minus 110, I would not. But if you want, you can go ahead. But I'm not going to do it. Anyway, for the actual recap of the quarter picks that we had. So overall, we just had a phenomenal tournament. Now, I will point out we did have multiple options per quarter, so keep that in mind. But for the first quarter, for the second quarter, for the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, we did pick the winner. So we ended up sweeping the actual quarter winners. Now, we had Sabalenka at minus 143. Yes, we did have Schneider and Vekic at longer prices, but we did make profit because we had a lot more on Sabalenka to win that quarter. Second quarter, we ended up having Goff, who lost. We had Pegula at 9-1, and we had Badoza at 16-1. So even though, of course, based on unit breakdown, we had more on Goff, still made nice profit on 16-1. Cannot complain there. For the third quarter, we had a couple of options. We skipped Rybakina because we don't trust her. We think that she's a choker in these events, and we were right. I ended up having Keys at 5-1, fresh off the title, and we had a Paolini at 6-1, so we got Keys home at 5-1 as well. For the fourth quarter, we ended up having Swiatek at minus 110. We threw in Putintseva because of Swiatek's, I'd say, lackluster history in Australia in the past. But either way, point is, for the fourth quarter, we won with Swiatek. Third quarter, we had Keys at 5-1. Badoza, we won at 16-1. And for the second quarter and for the first quarter, we ended up having Sabalenka at minus 143. A phenomenal outright episode for us for the quarters. So once again, feels good. I know we don't cover many women's events. We'd cover the Grand Slams for women, and we had a phenomenal outright episode. Now, unfortunately for us, I guess, not going to try. It's kind of nitpicking, but I have to at least mention it. Out of all four people that we picked to win their quarter, or that we successfully picked to win their quarter, we only have one to win the entire event. We only have Sabalenka left at plus 240. So hopefully Sabalenka gets the job done. Once again, we could, in theory, hedge with Swiatek if we want to. No offense to Keys, no offense to Badoza. I'm not picking either to win the event. So either way, a point is an overall great outright episode for us. Hopefully, Sabalenka wins the event, but honestly, even if she doesn't, not going to complain too much. We won all four quarter picks, so can't really complain too much. Overall, a great episode for us, a great tournament so far for us, and hopefully we end up sweeping once again here in the semis and for the final. Anyway, time to recap what happened in the actual quarterfinals. Starting off with before we get into the recap of the quarterfinals, do want to remind you once again that you can show support for the show by like, subscribing to YouTube. And a reminder, you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. I know we finally crossed over 700 subscribers for the channel, so thank you. Still trying to push to 1,000. Once again, we have outrights. We have actual episodes per round for Grand Slams. We do the same for 1,000 events. We also have breakdowns of the 250s. We cover basically everything for this, I'd say, overall podcast for the actual tennis slate. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the show. Hopefully, you made some money. And a reminder, please let the, I'd say, podcast be known to people that you know. Try to spread the word. We're trying to get to 1,000. And I still believe Without Bias is the best tennis podcast on the planet. If you are interested in gambling, every pick is free. I'm sure you've seen a lot of tennis, I'd say, tipsters on Twitter. Spoiler, they all kind of suck, and they all charge you money for it, and I'm not charging you anything. So once again, if you do want to get good picks and you want to show some support, it is all free. It's all documented. If you want to see how the podcast does, check out previous episodes. I'm not hiding anything. So once again, if you do want to show some support, you can by leaving a rating and review on Spotify or Apple, or once again, by showing some support by like, subscribing to YouTube, and also telling other people about the podcast. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch. I'm actually wearing a shirt right now for the Tennis Game Podcast. So once again, if you do want to check out the merchandise we have this shirt in different colors. We have mugs, we have sweatshirts, a lot of options for the show. Plus, we have the NBA show, we have the MLB show, a lot of other podcasts that have merch on the network. So check out the actual merch store. Plus, a reminder, in honor of the big game, we do have a great deal going on from now until February 9th, 15% of everything in the merch store with the promo code Big Game. So once again, if you do want to check out the tennis gambling podcast stuff, you can get a discount, 15% off when you use the promo code Big Game before February 9th. Now, time to get into the actual recap of what happened in the quarterfinals. So starting off with the actual first matchup that we ended up seeing. We ended up seeing Badoza beat Goff. Now, this was a bit surprising to some, including me. I did think Badoza would hang in there because we had Goff team total over, but Badoza was too good, and Goff could not hit a forehand. So you saw Badoza win 7-5, 6-4. I guess the counterpoint would be if Goff was even halfway decent on the forehand side, you probably would have won. But you can't view it that way because Goff's had forehand issues for years, and it came back in the worst of ways in the quarterfinals. Now, Badoza has been great in the event. She's only dropped one set, so I can't really roast Badoza at all, as she did enough to win. She's been solid. She's been aggressive. And besides the one match against Kutsyuk where she struggled with the wind and she had that great meme of her kind of yelling at Tsitsipas, she's been really comfortable in a lot of these matches. So Badoza has definitely turned the clock back. She's been very, very good. And Goff was really, I'd say, victimized by her consistency. And it felt like she was able to extract unforced errors from Goff by keeping the ball in play and by not shooting herself on the foot. And that's kind of what you need to do sometimes when you're playing tennis, which is let your opponent self-destruct. Don't bail them out. Keep the ball in play and let the other player once again just spray balls all over the outside of the court, and that's what we ended up seeing as Goff just could not keep the ball in play. So overall, a nice performance by Badoza, nice upset to start the actual, I'd say, round, as she was 3-1, and we saw Badoza advance to the semis in once again a pretty surprising run. But for us, it was great for us because we had Goff and we ended up having Badoza to win the quarter. So either way, we would have won, but getting a 16-1 shot home feels pretty good. So thank you, Badoza, for getting the job done there. Now, for the actual other matches we ended up seeing, we saw a couple of other competitive matches. We saw Sabalenka, who ended up winning in 3. Looked a bit dicey there, actually, as she ended up dropping the second set 6-2, and she was down a break to immediately start the to immediately start the third set. She was down 1-0 and down 2-1, both with breaks, and then came back with an immediate break right after. That eventually did break in the 3-4 game to serve it out for the match. So Sabalenka looked fine. The thing is, I thought the spread was a bit disrespectful. I thought that Pavlyuchenkova was going to keep it somewhat competitive because the head-to-head history was close, but it was mostly trying to find value on a minus 1250 favorite. When you find people that are favored by, once again, over minus 1,000, you got to find some value. Either you pick them to bury them or you pick the other player to keep it close. I did fade Sabalenka. I thought she'd win. I thought it's I think it was like 6 games or something. It was insanely disrespectful. I thought that once again, it was going to be closer than people thought, and it was as it went 3. So overall, I'd say a good read there. Sabalenka, though, did get the job done, so our outright is still alive for the title, and which we did end up winning the outright for the quarter. So basically the perfect outcome for us for the sake of that episode. We saw Keys beat Svitolina in 3, which was exactly what I predicted. I thought Keys would struggle a bit early against Svitolina's consistency. Then I thought maybe she would settle in. Thought it'd be close, though, and it was. They had a pretty good head-to-head history, and I thought Keys would win in 3, which ended up happening exactly. So overall, we got everything right in that one, and we got the 5-1 home for Keys to win the quarter. For the last one, ended up getting Swiatek right, as we picked her to bury Navarro. Thought it would be more based on Navarro's fatigue. And I thought Navarro, once again, looked good. When you see 6-1, 6-2, you go, damn, Navarro really struggled after having all those marathon matches. I really didn't think stamina was an issue. I thought that Navarro looked pretty good. It just seemed like Swiatek just hit a certain gear where she was just unplayable for the opposition. Swiatek is just on the warpath, and Navarro, unfortunately for her, was on the train tracks of the train coming through, and she got run over. I got nothing else to add there. I thought Swiatek played insanely well. I thought Navarro played extremely well for a player who only won 3 games. I think she would have beaten a lot of players in potentially the top 10, top 15 if she played that well, and it didn't matter because Swiatek just completely destroyed her on almost every long rally. So Navarro ran into a buzzsaw, and she got sawed in half. That's kind of what happened there. But either way, nice win for Swiatek. Cashed the -5.5, and we ended up having, once again, a pretty solid quarterfinal episode. I'll try to keep it rolling here for the semis. Before we get into the actual preview of the semifinal matches, I want to remember once again that we are brought to you by DraftKings because the playoffs are here, and we're actually up to the once again, conference title games. We have the AFC title game and the NFC title game. If you want to bet on the action, check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. A reminder that scoring touchdowns is pretty important to winning in the playoffs. You could win big by betting on touchdowns. Number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown with DraftKings Sportsbook and make your pick. A reminder, though, when you do sign up for your new account, new customers will get a great promo right now. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus instantly. So once again, betting $5 for a chance to win $200 in bonus bets instantly is definitely a great deal. Not even a chance to. You're just guaranteed to get $200 in bonus bets by betting $5. So once again, a great promo. If you're trying to get into a new book, try out DraftKings there for the promo. And a reminder that you have to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code SGP. Code SGP for new customers get $200 in bonus bets instantly. When you bet just $5, only DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the quarters. Time to move on into the semifinal matchup. So starting off with the first matchup on the card, you have a matchup between Sabalenka and Badoza. Now, these players are friends, so they faced off before. They practiced together. Seems like they hang out a lot, so we'll see how it goes. But either way, Sabalenka is -310. They're looking at Badoza, who's +260. For the game spread here, you have -4 for Sabalenka. You have +4 for Badoza. For the over-under in games, you have around 21.5. Now, for the set spread, you have Sabalenka in straight sets at -105. You have Badoza to win a set at +1.5 sets at -125. For the over 2.5 sets, you have +150. Now, for the head-to-head, Sabalenka's been good. No real ways about it. No other way about it, because you're looking at Sabalenka, who is currently 6-2 in the head-to-head. Now, they faced off in a set in the World Tennis League in late December. Sabalenka won a set 6-2. Do I care? No. It's one set. I'm not going to overreact too much to it. It's in a different league, but I have it down here. So technically, they did have a recent meeting, kind of. Face off in the French Open, though, last year. Sabalenka won in straight sets, 7-5, 6-1. Face off in Stuttgart in 2024. That was on clay. And you end up seeing Sabalenka win with a retirement in the third set. So it was 3-3, but Oza got hurt, had to quit. Face off in Miami last year as well. And you saw Sabalenka win 6-4, 6-3. So that's the most recent hardcourt meeting. It was last year. But they tend to see some competitive matchups here. So you're looking at Sabalenka, who I think has been objectively better on hard court over the course of her career than Badoza, not even close, because, of course, she has won multiple Grand Slam titles. She won 2 Australian Open titles, and she won a U.S. Open title last year. So Sabalenka, I think, of course, is the better player. Now, Badoza's been good, though. Badoza and Sabalenka have both only dropped one set. So, once again, both players have been coasting so far in the event. Now, you saw Badoza beat Goff. She had a couple of, I'd say, easier opponents, though, over the last couple of rounds before that, because Pegula ended up losing. So she ended up having a bit of a surprising, I'd say, opponent in the round of 16, which she ended up winning 6-1, 7-6 in. Had the 3-setter against Kostyuk, beat Gibson, beat Wang. So not the most difficult path for Badoza, and before she ended up having to face Goff in the quarterfinals. As for Sabalenka, you can argue that it's been a little bit more difficult, but it's kind of the same boat. Once again, a bit of a surprise there in the quarterfinals, having a relatively, I'd say, unexpected opponent in the quarters, which ended up winning in 3. Then she beat Andreeva 6-1, 6-2, beat Towson. She probably should have dropped the set there, as she was down a break with Towson serving for the first set, and she got broken, and Sabalenka did win in a tiebreak. So, once again, overall, both players look pretty good. But Sabalenka is the much better player based on hard court skill and hard court resume. So, for the actual matchup, first of all, do I think Badoza is going to win? No. I'm not going to say that she's on upset, that Sabalenka's an upset alert here. If Badoza plays well, then I think you make the argument that anything's possible. But I really thought Goff just handed the match over. It was still competitive, 7-5, 6-4, and Goff was awful. So it really felt like Badoza was pretty fortunate to catch Goff on her worst day, because I think Badoza played fine, but I didn't think she played well enough to beat Sabalenka or potentially Swiatek, for example, to be a serious threat to win the title. So for this one, even though they're friends, and even though I do think that Sabalenka can get some unforced error issues at times, I think that she's better. I think 4 is a bit low, actually. I'll go Sabalenka in this one. I think the argument is, can Badoza make one set interesting? Because she's had a couple marathon sets. I think she can. Sabalenka, though, has been a little bit underwhelming in terms of win margin in the event. She beat Andreeva 6-1, 6-2. Besides that, though, 3 sets against a relative unknown, or I should say as a massive favorite in the quarterfinals against a player who I think she was priced to destroy in Pavlyuchenkova. She was favored to win by 6 games. She wasn't close to that. So she was a bit underwhelming there. Had a competitive straight set win against Tausen. Had once again, a competitive set there against, in the second round matchup, actually, against Buzas. So she's had a couple of competitive sets here, and we've seen the same thing here from Badoza. Badoza's had a couple of 7-6 and 7-5. She had a competitive set against Goff 7-5, had a 7-6 in the previous round, had a 3-setter against Kostyuk, and had a 7-6 against Wang. So I do think I actually am going to expect at least one competitive set here. So I am going to go with maybe going Sabalenka team total over 12.5. I think there could be a 7-5 or 7-6. Maybe even Badoza wins a set. That wouldn't shock me either. But you've seen, I'd say, some vulnerable sets from Sabalenka where she's been, I'd say, not at her A game at times. She'll I'd say, rev it up a little bit when she needs to be. But she's been a bit lax at times, and I think that Badoza is good enough to capitalize on that for at least 20 minutes. Maybe not enough to win a set, but I can see one set going to a 7-5 or 7-6. So I think I'm going to go with that. But I think 4 games, the spread is too low. I think Sabalenka is in a pretty good, I don't want to say buy low spot because she's Sabalenka, but the point is, I think after having a 3-set marathon against a pretty, I'd say, surprising opponent for the sake of that outcome, it might be a good spot to potentially sell high on Badoza, who got by because Goff couldn't a forehand, and now you want to assume that Badoza is going to come crashing back down to earth, facing off against an elite hardcourt player, arguably the best hardcourt player on the planet on the women's side. I think I'll go with Sabalenka minus the 4, and I'll go with the team total over here. I think you're looking at, once again, what should be one close set, maybe one blowout set. If you got a 7-6, 6-2, that wouldn't shock me. But Sabalenka, I think, is the better player on hard court, and I think that's good enough for me for what I think is a pretty low spread. So give me Sabalenka minus the 4 in this one as well. Moving on, though, to the next matchup. You have Keys against Swiatek. Now, Keys has made a couple of deep runs in Grand Slams, and then she tends to choke. That's the story of her career. As for Swiatek, she's made it to the semis for the first time in Australia, and she's been dominant in the process. Once again, she's dropped 7 games in her last 4 matches combined. It's one of the greatest stretches I've seen in a long time in a Grand Slam. Now, you're looking at her actual matches. Navarro, 6-1, 6-2. Elise, 6-0, 6-1. Raducanu, 6-1, 6-0. And then she ended up playing against Sramkova. Let me just make sure I didn't butcher that pronunciation. So she ended up beating Siniakova in the first round with a 3 and a 4. And then in the second round, ended up having a matchup against a player. I'm trying to not butcher her name here. Sramkova. And she was able to win that one 6-0, 6-2. So once again, she's been smacking people. Now, Keys is better than a lot of those opponents. You could argue Navarro is kind of in the same boat as Keys. Maybe Keys a little bit better. But beating Navarro 6-1, 6-2, damn, that's impressive. Because that was definitely a match that I thought could be interesting. At least for maybe a set. I did pick Swiatek to cover. It was mostly based on fatigue for Navarro. I just thought that she ran out of gas. It was not stamina as the reason why Navarro lost. Swiatek was just on a certain level that nobody could really match. And I just thought that she was really playing the best tennis of her career, arguably. Now, Keys has had a couple marathons recently, had a 3-setter against Svitolina, had a 3-setter against Rybakina, had a 3-setter against Rus, and she also ended up beating Collins in between there in straight sets. So Keys had a couple marathons. There was some extra time off, though, so maybe Keys will be fully rested for this one. Head-to-head, though, is drastically in favor of Swiatek. She's currently 4-1 in the head-to-head. Now, faced off the last 2 meetings on clay, Swiatek won 6-1, 6-3. Then again, she's the best clay player on the planet on the women's side, so not really shocked there. Played Cincinnati, In 2022, the last hardcore meeting, Keys did win 6-3, 6-4. Face of Indian Wells, 2022, you saw Swiatek win 6-1, 6-0. Face off in Rome in 2021, and Swiatek won 7-5, 6-1. So 2 career hardcore meetings, both dated, both in 2022. Keys won in straight sets, and you saw Swiatek win 6-1, 6-0 in Indian Wells. So the point is, Keys has played well. Now, the problem you run into for Keys, or maybe the actual, I'd say, bright spot for Keys, her style of play is very, very aggressive and very, very streaky, which could be good or bad. Because on one hand, the argument is, well, if Swiatek keeps the ball in play a lot, Keys is just going to lose comfortably. Maybe. However, the counterpoint would be you can't beat Swiatek right now just being extremely conservative and being, I'd say, rock solid, because Swiatek is too good right now, and she will outplay you in that type of play style battle. So I guess the argument you can make is that if you're going to pull the upset, you need to be aggressive, you need to take chances, and you need to hope that Swiatek once again gets bullied around the court. Because if you keep it relatively neutral in the rallies, Swiatek's going to beat you. So I feel like once again, Keys has the play style, which can maybe pull off an upset if things go well, if she finds her spots, and if she can push Swiatek around the court, be aggressive with the second serve return, then maybe Keys can find some openings to win the match. Am I picking her to win the match? Hell no. I'm not going to do so. I think Keys is going to lose. Swiatek is just too good right now. There's really no way around it. I would take her over Sabalenka right now in a potential final. So we might get that matchup maybe. But for the sake of the spread and for the sake of the actual money line, you're looking at Swiatek, who's around minus 565. Keys is plus 415 for the spread. You have minus 5.5 for Swiatek at around even money. You have Keys plus 5.5 at minus 115. For the over-under, you have 19.5 for the actual set spread. Swiatek in straight sets is minus 175. You have Keys to win a set at plus 145. The over 2.5 sets is a plus 210. So Keys, once again, is going to keep being aggressive. She's going to keep trying to bully the opposition, trying to end points quickly. Will that work? In my opinion, no. I think Swiatek's too good. I think that Keys are going to hit a bunch of unforced errors. I think that Keys will end up getting destroyed in the course of this matchup. Maybe one competitive set. A 6-4 is actually not that bad at this point for how the opposition's done against Swiatek lately. But I can't pick her to win. I just think Swiatek's too good right now. So, Swiatek's been good in the head-to-head, being up 4-1 as well. And every meeting that she's won, all 4 of them, have been by this margin of 5.5. She's gone, once again, she's covered the spread in all the wins. I see Keys struggling. I think she might have moments, but she has to play basically a perfect match to actually hit her spots every time to beat Swiatek, whose court coverage is great. The overall depth has been great. The variety's been great. And the serve's been good for Swiatek as well. I see a tough matchup for anybody against Swiatek right now, Keys included. I'll go with Swiatek minus the 5.5 here. Think she'll get the job done. See some comments, by the way. First of all, I see Nishkal saying that Saba and Iga final be epic. Yes, it would be. Hopefully, that's what we get. I see Bill. I see Niskal. I see, Niskal mentioning that Iga plus money versus Sabs. I think she'll be favored, personally. She's favored to win the event right now. So I do think that she would be favored in the final matchup, but it would be close. Once again, maybe minus 120, minus 130. So I think that Iga would be favored, but not by much. I see Bill, I see Savage, and I see Johnson. Once again, thanking me for the picks. Appreciate it. Hopefully you do enjoy the show. I see Zur stopping by. Welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the show. Anyway, I'm going to go with Swiatek to win comfortably. Nothing against Keys. She cashed us the 5-1 outright for the quarter, but I think that eventually she was going to run into a player that was going to take advantage of her flaws, and right now, Swiatek is that player. Give me Swiatek to win comfortably, maybe like 6-3, 6-2. Could be a blowout, who knows, but Keys is playing well. She's been dropping sets, though. She also played in Adelaide and won a title right before this, so fatigue could be an issue. But give me, once again, right now, what I think is the best player in the tour to win this, I'd say, match pretty comfortably. Give me Swiatek minus the 5.5 for this matchup. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual picks. Now it's time for the lock and dog plays. Before that, though, I want to remember once again, they're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because they have a lot of items at their pick menu. They have a lot of ways to make money easily with, once again, profit boosts and gimme pick'ems. They also have a lot of sports that you can choose from: NFL, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, tennis, and more. You can also use special and boost on our flex entries. For my entry, though, for the upcoming NFL card, I'll go with Josh Allen higher on his rush attempts in the game against Kansas City. Then they'll use him a lot in a must-win game. Plus, a reminder, you'd also use the promo code SGPN when you sign up for your new account to get a special pick and first-time deposit offer up to 1K bonus cash on a fancy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. A reminder that Rhythm is the proud partner of the SGPN because it allows you to helps you build a betting model. If you want to try experimenting with betting models, you can build models in seconds, build your own model, copy off the leaderboard, or you'd also, once again, take one that Rhythm can build you from scratch. So if you do want to try out the actual, I'd say, model process, Rhythm can help you do it very easily by letting you build a model in seconds. A reminder that you could also get NFL picks, NFL props, college basketball plays, NBA. Rhythm has it all. And a reminder, you can also try it out for free for a week. Send a free trial today by going to sportsgames.com Rhythm, sportsgames.com, RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished previewing the semifinal matchups here in the Women's Australian Open. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock on this one, I'm going to go with Sabalenka, but I'm going to go with Badoza having, I'd say, one competitive set, maybe more. I am going to go with Sabalenka, team total over 12.5 games here at minus 110 as my lock. Now, Sabalenka is minus 315. Badoza, though, has only dropped one set in the entire event. She has played well. Now, she's had a pretty, I'd say, easy path so far, with the exception of Goff in the last match. But she's had a couple of marathon sets. To go through those, you're looking at Badoza, who has had a couple of, once again, sets that have featured a 7-5 or 7-6. To go into depth on that, Badoza has seen a 7-5 or 7-6 set in, just to go through the actual order here, in 2 straight matches, and she had a 3-setter in the matchup against Kostyuk. So if you want to actually factor in her 5 matches in this event, there's been a 7-5 or 7-6 in 3 of them, and the other one also ended up having a 3-set marathon. So the opposition's done pretty well in actual total games here, and I think you're looking at a spot where Sabalenka could win in straight sets with a 7-5 or 7-6, and if that's the case, you win anyway, or you get a 3-setter, and you're looking at Badoza in good form. Sabalenka, though, you're looking at her going over the team total in 3 of the last 4, so even though she ended up winning in straight sets in each of the first 4 matchups here, she ended up having a pretty competitive set in 2 of those 4, and she ended up having a 3-setter in the last round. So Sabalenka's gone over this team total in 3 of the last 4. So I think there is a couple of, once again, ways to get there, whether it involves a potential 3-set marathon, or whether it involves a 7-6 or 7-5 set. But Sabalenka at minus 315, you got to get creative for actual value. And you're looking at Sabalenka, who's had some competitive sets against Badoza in their careers. Now, Sabalenka's been good in the head-to-head winning, but there have been a couple of competitive sets, as 4 of the last 5 head-to-head matchups featured Sabalenka going over this team total of 12.5. So I do think when you're looking at the overall matchup here, I think Sabalenka's going to win, but I think Badoza's been good enough to not be disrespected. I think you're looking at what should be at least one competitive set. To go through the history, though, of the 2 in 2 out of 3 set matches, so I'll skip over the World Tennis League matchup we saw a couple weeks ago. They faced off a couple times last year. Sabalenka went over the team total in 2 of the 3, each of the last 2 actually. Faced off in Stuttgart in 2023. Sabalenka won in 3 as well. Stuttgart, again, they had a bunch of meetings in Stuttgart actually in 2022, and Sabalenka did win 7-6, 6-4. Point is, though, when you're looking at the head-to-head history, you're looking at Sabalenka going over this number in 4 of the last 5, and she's gone over in 3 of the last 4 in general. I think this line's pretty affordable at minus 110. Sabalenka's been good here, not as dominant as usual, where she's had a couple sets which have been a little bit shaky. I can see that happening here, but Badoza's been good enough to actually make this competitive. I'll go with Sabalenka team total over. If it gets to 3 sets, you feel good about it. If Sabalenka wins in straight sets, you are still not totally dead. I like the value there, though. I'll go with that as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go with the basic idea of backing the best player in the field right now to win comfortably again. Give me Swiatek minus 5.5 games at even money. Took it in the last round against Navarro. We'll run it back here. Swiatek has lost 7 games in her last 4 matches combined. It has been an absolute bloodbath for the event so far. She has been destroying everyone. Keys, I think, can make it interesting if she hits her spots and if she limits the unforced errors. Based on Keys' overall, I'd say, inconsistency in her career, it's a big if. I'll put it that way. Now, Swiatek's been great in the head-to-head. She's currently 4-1 a lifetime. She's covered the spread in all 4 wins against Keys. So when she wins, she dominates, and I see that happening once again. Keys, though, has played a lot of tennis recently, had a title run that we ended up seeing in Adelaide right before the event here. So she had a title run in Adelaide. Then she had a couple 3-setters recently. Fatigue could be an issue. There is some extra time off, but having 3 separate 3-setters in her last 4 matches in Adelaide to a title, then having 3 3-set matches in 3 of the last 4 matches here in the Australian Open. It's a lot of time on court. I think that Swiatek will win comfortably here. But once again, you're looking at a player who's just so far ahead of the field right now based on quality. I think that she'll be able to win this one comfortably. Give me keys to get blown out in one set 6-1, and that should be enough to help out for the actual spread. So I am going to go with Swiatek minus 5.5 at even money for the value. So once again, the plays here for the women's semifinal matchups, the lock's going to be on Sabalenka. Team total over 12.5 games at minus 110 against Badoza. For the dog, I am going to go with Swiatek minus 5.5 games at even money against Keys. That's going to wrap it up. Remind back once again for the men's semifinal matchups taking place probably, or at least for the podcast, probably going to do that later today. Until next time, though, you can find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Find me on other podcasts of the network. And a reminder, find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. You can also leave a rating and review on YouTube. You can leave a rating and review on Spotify or app. You can also like and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. And a reminder as well, we're back once again for the next couple rounds in general. And we'll, of course, be back for the events after the Australian Open concludes. But once again, if you do enjoy the podcast, please let it be known and share the podcast through word of mouth. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.